Okay, hello everyone. I'm Jim Lewis, President of the Lewis Institute, and I'm here with Doug DeCarlo, who's going to do your presentation. This webinar is being done in collaboration with the Lewis Institute and the Doug DeCarlo Group. It's part of a series of free webinars that are being produced by NC State University as well in our Project Management Certificate Program. If you're interested in more information on the certificate program, you can follow the link right here in the middle of the page, which is http://continuingeducation.ncsu.edu. For those of you that attend the webinar, you will receive one PDU for attending the program. And if you want to download copies of the handouts, you can go to the link at the bottom of the page here, which is http://lewisinstitute.com/AAAWH/xtreme6.pdf, and these are in PDF format, so you can download them. Near the end of the webinar, we're going to give you a keyword which you must send to us by email to verify that you did watch this, because it's now going to be uploaded to YouTube, and we will then certify that you are eligible for the PDU for this program. And we will tell you that keyword near the end. So I'm going to turn the program over to Doug, and we'll get started here in just 1 second.
Hello everybody, I'm Doug DeCarlo, and today I'm going to focus my presentation on extreme project management on the topic of how to keep your project in control and deliver value in the face of volatility. Now, going into this presentation, I want to make one comment that may seem a little brash to you, but that's basically the truth as I see it, and namely that in my experience, project managers seem to live lives that vacillate between frantic and quiet desperation. And there are a number of reasons for this. One is that the project manager may be in the wrong job, or the organizational climate and chaos can be so untenable that it in and of itself causes misery. However, beyond that, there's another factor that I have found that creates a lot of havoc on projects and a lot of upset among project team members and project managers, and that is applying a project management methodology or approach that does not fit the project environment. In other words, there's a mismatch between the nature of the project and the type of project management methodology that's being used. So that's what I'm going to focus on today, extreme project management and the environment and the context within which that is, at least in my experience, an appropriate and congruent solution. I'm going to make 3 main points. The first is to give you an opportunity to assess a project that you may have going on right now to see if it really meets the criteria for being an extreme project. Then I want to talk about what are the keys to success in managing and leading an extreme project. And again, I'm going to cover these at a very high level. If you'd like more information, you can always contact me, and I'll tell you how to do that later. And then thirdly, I want to give you several essential tools that you can apply immediately to a project at hand that will help clarify what it is you're doing, for not only for your benefit, but importantly for team members as well. Okay, so let me give some general context here and talk a little bit about today's project landscape. And as you can see from this picture, from this slide, there are various kinds of projects depicted here. And we're using the dimensions of change on the one hand and speed and uncertainty on the horizontal axis. And as you move from the left to the right and you pick up speed and uncertainty, the nature of project management, in my experience, seems to change. So for instance, rapid application development is a term that was coined, I think, first in the IT industry in the late 80s. And that's a technique where the project team, working with the customer, works in very quick iterations to help the customer understand what they really want and to also test technical feasibility. And rapid application development is done primarily in a controlled environment compared to extreme project management, which is done in an environment where there's not only speed and uncertainty, but also high degrees of change happening. And the difference between an extreme environment, let's say, and a RAD environment is that the extreme has a lot of the characteristics of the RAD environment, plus the project is subject to change and uncertainty due to perhaps complex organizational issues, large numbers of stakeholders. The project could be politically sensitive. There could be a tremendous number of inter-project dependencies. There could be a competitive environment that's causing projects to have to move and change quickly. The project can be dependent on external suppliers, all of whom have interdependencies with your project over which you may have little control. So all of these things tend to put the project in a, I guess what I would say, it's kind of like dealing, you're in a hurricane, essentially. And what we find is that the practices that work very well on the left, which is traditionally known as waterfall project management, tend to break down the further you move to the right and you hit those environments called extreme and RAD. Let me give you a little bit of a tool that you can use to test to see if your project meets some of the criteria for being extreme. You look at the level of complexity, both technical, organizational. Organizational can mean how politically sensitive is the project, how divided is the stakeholder base, is the team distributed or is it co-located? Those kinds of things contribute to organizational complexity. Business climate. Is the business climate stable or changing? What about the level of change and uncertainty expected on the project? What about the need for innovation? What about the need for collaboration? Essentially, the more you move to the right, the more you need a more agile project management approach in order to succeed. So someone once told me, a friend of mine who was an extreme project manager, he said, yeah, extreme projects can be hard to control. They're kind of like trying to change a tire on a car while the car is going 75 miles an hour and the driver has been drinking heavily. So if you're experiencing that kind of a situation, you may be involved in an extreme project. So here are the three ways that I have found that are useful in helping control a project that is extreme and deliver value. So, by the way, just as an aside, all project management seeks to deliver value and keep the project in control. That's a given. The question is, how do you do this under situations of high change, high uncertainty? So the first is to adopt what I refer to as a quantum mindset. A quantum mindset, in my definition, means to take a change-tolerant view of your project environment. I'm going to get very specific about what I mean about a quantum mindset. Secondly, to adopt a change-tolerant project management model. So what is a model that you might use that supports keeping a project in control, yet is also flexible at the same time? And then thirdly, I'm going to wind up by talking about managing the dynamics. That is, managing the context or the people side of projects and project management. So Newtonian and quantum mindset. Let me explain those. First of all, what is a mindset? By a mindset, I mean your beliefs and assumptions about how the world works. The Newtonian mindset is primarily a left brain orientation, and the left brain is, as we know, is very good for logic, for thinking, for analysis, language, mathematics. All of those things work very, very nicely on the left side of the brain. That's its primary function. The right side of the brain is really, in a way, the opposite. The right side of the brain relies on hunches, intuition. It's the side of the brain that does not rely on looking for linear solutions of cause and effect. And most people that I run into in project management tend to approach the world from a Newtonian perspective. And I will give you some very specific characteristics of what I mean by that. But my premise here is that you need both the left and the right brain to run a project. However, when we're dealing with extreme projects, the scale tips towards the quantum side. That is, the quantum side of your worldview is what it takes to help ensure a greater possibility of success. So how do you know if you are Newtonian versus quantum oriented? If your primary belief system, that is your worldview, your assumptions, how you see the world, says that stability is the norm, believes that you can put together a plan that will not necessarily change that much. In other words, the plan rules versus change is the norm, or reality rules, as I like to say. Or in the Newtonian world, you believe that it's really important to stay the course because you spent so much time planning, you have so much of a vested interest in the plan. Or do you actually look for reasons to change and adapt? In the Newtonian world, we are trained to do a lot of upfront research and deliver the planned result. And that can work under certain circumstances. In the quantum world, or in the world of extreme and agile project management, we talk about delivering the desired result, which may be quite different from the original planned result. In the Newtonian world, we believe that planning drives results, and in the quantum world, we look at the latest results, we deplan, and we replan. In the Newtonian world, project managers, at least when I was brought up, were taught to be and expected to be good task masters. In the quantum world, you have to be more of a relationship manager. The slogan in the Newtonian world is do it right the first time. In the quantum world, we never know what's right the first time until we discover what's right. The idea is to do it right the last time when it's delivered. So here, if you try to apply a Newtonian mental model or worldview in a quantum world, you are up for a lot of frustration. The norm that I use is reality rules, period. So you really need to adopt your mindset to fit reality. So the recipe for self-misery is to try to change the world to fit your mental model. It's a lot easier to change your mental model to fit the world, assuming you have some tools that will enable you to keep your project in control under quantum-like circumstances. So that's the mindset, the all-important mindset. Until you can adapt that mindset, it's really going to be a struggle. And towards the end of the presentation, I'll give you some ideas and actually a checklist of some things that you can do to act in a more quantum way. The next topic I want to talk about beyond the quantum mindset is how to apply a change-tolerant project management model. So let's take a look at that. The model that I'm referring to, the one I should say that I created, really is based around answering 4 questions. And I call them the 4 business questions of extreme project management. The first question focuses on who needs what and why. And notice it doesn't say who wants what and why. You all know as project managers that if you may have delivered what somebody said they wanted, but they've said that's not what I've needed. The idea is to try to understand the needs as opposed to just the wants. It's also important to understand why it's wanted, because there may be other options that you can discover to achieve the need. So the first question is to discover that, and the role of the project manager is to facilitate that out of the customer community or the customer representative. The second question relates to what will it take to do it? In other words, what will it take to get what they want? That is the domain of the project manager to come up with an answer to that question. One of the problems that you face often is that the customer set will not only try to tell you what they want, although they usually have a half-baked idea, they will also dictate to you what they think you should have or do in order to get what it is they want. So here we have a case of the customer taking over ownership of the second question, which to me is tantamount to having the inmates run the asylum. So you need to own the answer to the second question. The third question requires an analysis of, can we actually do what it takes? Are we able to get what it's required in order to close the gap? Then the fourth question is to understand, is it really worth it? Based on knowing what it takes, is there a viable project value proposition? And that's up to the customer to answer. One of the things that distinguishes extreme project management from traditional project management, at least in some circles, is that we focus on delivering business value. That is, the project is always calibrated to the extent possible towards its ability to achieve the expected return on investment. So for instance, bringing it in on time, on scope, on budget, on quality does not necessarily mean that you have delivered business value. So we tend to be more business value focused in our view of project management. Those four business questions that I focused on previously are the basis for the flexible project model. And each of the first four elements of the project model focuses on providing answers to those four questions. The first, let me just give you a highlight of each of the elements. Visionate is well, we've got visionate, speculate, innovate, reevaluate, and then finally disseminate. Visionate is the part of the project where we attempt to understand what is wanted from the perspective of the project sponsor and the customer set in general. And I recognize that visionate is not a real word. However, when I created the model, I really wanted something to rhyme with speculate, innovate, reevaluate, and disseminate. And I was tempted to substitute the term hallucinate for visionate, because it seems to me that many sponsors, when they kick off projects, are really attempting to launch something that may not be realistic, but we have a way of handling that in extreme project management. So visionate, what is wanted? Speculate has to do with how we're going to get it. Innovate has to do with the actual doing, discovering can we actually produce what's wanted. And reevaluate is a pause point where we look at what we've done and decide if we're going to continue or how we're going to modify our direction on the project. And disseminate is ultimately turning the deliverable over to the customer. Here are some of the elements that comprise the visionate component, and I'm only going to have time to talk about several of these. The first being the three-sentence project skinny, and secondly, project imperatives. So let me go on to that and give you an example as well as a tool for extreme project management. And we're going to talk about what I call the project from heaven. And the first tool that actually this is the second tool I'm giving you. The first tool had to do with helping you determine if your project tends to be more traditional or more extreme. This tool is one that is intended to help you and the project team come to agreement as to what the goal of the project is. And the goal of the project is expressed in what I refer to as the three-sentence project skinny. The first sentence answers the question, who will do what for whom? That is, what is the name of the project team? What is it that they're delivering? And for whom are they expected to deliver the result? Who is in the bullseye of the stakeholder community? The second sentence, since projects have three components, a beginning, and as someone said, a muddle and an end, the second sentence focuses on when will the project be considered over. That is, at what point can you turn the lights out and say the project is done, we're moving on. And the third sentence focuses on the business rationale for doing the project in the first place. And it says this project supports the organization's objective to, whatever it is, usually takes the form of 2 or 3 bulleted items. So that's the framework within which you can define the goal for your project, the 3-sentence skinny. Now, we're going to take an example here. This is a fictitious example, or I should say a metaphorical example, let's put it that way. And I'm going to give you a project that just came down from heaven. And here's what the project sponsor, or the sponsor of all sponsors, had to say. The sponsor, by the way, was not happy, is not happy with how people are behaving themselves on the planet Earth, and has decided that he wants to launch a new project. And it's called the Noah Project. And so consider yourselves Noah and the Noah family for this example. And here's what the sponsor says. It's time to start over with a whole new team. A massive flood is coming 6 months from today. Only you and the Noah family, along with 2 of every animal, will be saved. Your job is to build an ark for the chosen ones. The specifications are as follows. The ark is to be 350 cubits long by 47 wide. Your budget is approximately 250,000 drachma. And I expect that 95% of the chosen ones must survive. And don't be concerned about gathering the animals. I have another team that I'm deploying to bring the animals to the ark. So your job would be at this point, having heard from the sponsor, to encapsulate what the sponsor said and come to consensus among the project team and with the sponsor as to exactly what you will be doing. And if this were a real live extreme project, we would be doing this in person or by telephone or using some kind of real-time communication system to capture and agree on the answers to this. We don't have time to do that right now, but I'll give you some options. The first sentence, which would you pick, having heard the description? Would you say that Noah and family will build an ark? Or will it build a floating device for the chosen ones? Or is their job to save the chosen ones from the flood? Which is it? Second sentence, when would you consider, in the example I gave you, your project to be considered over? Is it over when the ark is built and it's loaded and the rain starts, or is it loaded after the flood ends and 95% have been saved? Or as some projects are over, the answer is never. They just seem to be careers rather than projects. And then finally, why is this project being done in the first place? And there are a couple of options there. The point that I'm making here, and I've never seen this one fail, that if you have 3 or 4 people who are allegedly working on the same project, even a project that's in progress, and you were to stop for 10 minutes and ask each person to write up their description in 3 sentences of how they see the project using this template, you, chances are, will find at least 2 different answers, meaning 2 different projects or 2 different interpretations of you think the same project is. So you already would be suffering from goal ambiguity, and you might not even know it. So this is a very handy device, not only to kick off a project, but to calibrate a project that's going on to be sure that everybody still has a common understanding of the goal. And notice, by the way, that the language that is used here is really everyday, pretty much plain English language. We believe in extreme project management that we are not going to try to get people on the project team to learn a specialized project management language. We want to do project management in the language that is resident to the people on the project team. So there you have the 3-sentence project skinny. Another thinking tool that we use in extreme project management, and it may be used under a different name in traditional and other forms of project management, is what I call the project imperatives. The project imperatives are those things that must go right for the project to succeed, and if they don't, we will fail. That is, on any project, there are hundreds of things that are very important that need to be dealt with, that need to be completed. However, there are typically only a handful of things that could be called showstoppers, that if you don't meet any one of those, the entire project will fail. So let's say if you had chosen that Noah and family will build an ark for the chosen ones, one of the imperatives might be that the ark must float. Another might be, since the flood was coming in exactly 6 months, it had to be done on time. Another might be that the ark had to be big enough to hold all of the chosen ones. So the imperatives are those things that are constantly focused on day in and day out in managing and leading the project. And I do want to say, too, that the imperatives have another use, and I'll just mention this in passing. Their use is to focus on, as a filter, I should say, for risk assessment. Anything that can impact the project in terms of a risk, the project imperatives can be used as a basis for that. So they're used for risk assessment. They are also used as a basis to establish the metrics for the project. That is, what exactly does float mean? When does floating end and sinking begin? See, the Newtonians come in very, very handy. Their mindset, their analytical mindset is very important in understanding the project imperatives. What exactly does big enough mean? What are the metrics? How do we know? How do we engineer this to be big enough? Again, this is a blending of both the Newtonian as well as the quantum worldview. So we need both on the project team. So again, the project imperatives. Do you have imperatives for your project? Can you identify the 3 to 6 things that must go right for your project or sub-project or deliverable to succeed? And if they don't, you'll fail. Does everybody else on your project team know what they are? Do you have metrics so that you can tell if you're achieving those objectives or not? Project imperatives. So that's a highlight of just 2 of the tools in the Vision 8 cycle. Speculate answers the question, how are we going to do the project? So we begin to get more granular when we get to speculate. So let me cover some of, well, actually there's one, and I just have time for one main point here in the speculate cycle, and that is focusing on deliverables. Every project, of course, has deliverables. And in the world of extreme project management, we don't manage projects by tasks because tasks change frequently, even though in Microsoft Project you can load it up with tasks. We tend to manage the project by deliverables, a family of deliverables rather than 10,000 tasks, which are probably at a level that's too difficult to manage. As some people would say, you can only detail a project at the level to which you can feasibly manage the project. In extreme projects, we manage projects by deliverables more than anything else. One of the points that I want to make here that has really come home to me in the last, I would say, 3 years is that poorly managed handoffs on projects, especially extreme projects which have lots of inter and intra-project dependencies, poorly managed handoffs are one of the biggest causes of project failure, as well as quality and as well as delayed schedules. The inability to do proper handoffs causes a tremendous amount of rework, which has all kinds of ramifications, not only in terms of poor resource allocation or resource usage, but in terms of quality and the level of happiness on the project as people have to keep correcting mistakes. I've heard it quoted that in projects it's not uncommon, and we're not even talking about extreme projects here, and let's say the more traditional project environments, it's not uncommon for there to be 30% rework associated with a project. That's a lot of rework. You can never eliminate it 100%, I don't think, but we can put a big dent in it. So in extreme project management, and maybe even in traditional, it's important as well to be sure that you identify for every deliverable on a project that there is a specific producer and that there is a specific customer identified. This is a simulated post-it note where in the NOAA's project that the deliverable was to build, one of the deliverables is to build a loading ramp. And what this says is that Jonah, whose job it is to oversee the development of the loading ramp, needs to ensure that Mariah, the customer of the loading ramp, gets what she wants. In other words, the ramp has to meet her requirements. And so in extreme project management, because there are so many moving parts, we train people at all levels in the project to what I would call micromanage, in a good sense. Project micromanage their deliverable so that when Jonah hands off to Mariah, that she is not surprised or dissatisfied with the loading ramp that she requested. It's if you start to investigate on your project, I think you will be surprised how often people who are producing deliverables are not meeting the requirements of the customer who requested the deliverable, and there needs to be a constant dialogue and rapport between Jonah and Mariah so that there are no surprises at the end. There's no excuse for Mariah getting a loading ramp that she says is not going to meet the requirements to load the animals. That needs to be discovered and built into the deliverable all along. So without having that dialogue and conversation at that level of the project causes a tremendous amount of problems. So we believe that, at least I like to say that, to me, an extreme project is a conversation. Think of it as a conversation where we have to answer some basic questions. What is it that we should be talking about? Who should be doing the talking? How do we capture what's talked about and do it in a way that's simple, that's user-friendly, and that's, to a certain extent, as much as possible, common sense, if not all common sense. So visionate, speculate, and now I'll touch on innovate. Innovate is the place where we are actually doing something. So we've come up with a plan. We know some of the things that we want to do, we want to try, we want to test feasibility. If you haven't gathered this already, extreme projects tend to be used in discovery-oriented environments. Once, by the way, the discovery and the uncertainty has been ironed out of the project, you can then revert to or move to a more traditional project management approach. But here, we are still pretty much in the discovery process. So innovate means actually doing something. And the goal of the innovate cycle is to produce, I mean, if we're going to fail, we don't want to take a long time to fail. You know, I say you fail your way to success. We try to fail early and often. And the slogan for the innovate cycle is demo or die. I first saw this sign, demo or die, over the, this was a laboratory at MIT where they were, I forgot the exact name of the laboratory, it escapes me at the moment, where they were coming up with new products. And the motto was that you had to demo or fail. So it's demo or die. Customers need something that they can see, feel, touch. Providing them with specs and documentation and expecting them to visualize what it is they want. And even though you can break their arm and get them to sign off on that, doesn't really count very much. They need to see it, feel it, smell it, touch it. You have to make it tactile. And so innovate means providing prototypes, getting people to test drive things. And the mechanism that we use in the innovate cycle is time boxing. Time boxing, again, is not a new concept. It predates the Agile project management movement by many years. It's a technique that's been used in engineering, among others, for a long time. It really comes into focus on extreme projects. And a time box, at least in the way I see it, define it, it's a short, cut-in-stone period of time during which the team works hard to achieve an agreed-upon outcome at the start of the time box. And by short period of time, we typically mean a week, 2 weeks, to a month. Most of the time boxing that's done in extreme project management is 1 month or less. And when it's applied to software development, time boxing is often done in weekly iterations, all the way up to 1 month, but quite often weekly iterations. And in going into the time box, there are specific goals that have been prioritized, and the team does a little bit of planning to see how they're going to tackle those goals. Then they work on them, and before they finish, they take some time to debrief and decide what went well, what will we do differently the next time, and then the results of the time box are shown to the customer. So the time box, again, is a way of learning fast. And one of the things that you hear, especially in the research and development community, in the scientific community, is that we are in the discovery business and we can't plan breakthroughs on schedule. Well, the answer is you probably can't plan breakthroughs on schedule, but you can plan experiments. And you know what you can do in terms of planning experiments. So the idea is to plan experiments using time boxing, as opposed to using open-ended research that goes on and on and on. See, at the end of the time box, you make a decision. And the decision is, do we want to continue along the path we've chosen? Do we want to abort it? Or do we find that what we've done is actually good enough so that we can move on? So that's the idea of the time box in the world of discovery-oriented project management. Some of the benefits that we have found are these. One is that time boxing avoids gold plating. Gold plating is a term that you may have heard that's used to refer to people who do more than they need to in order to satisfy the requirement. So the more time you have, the more bells and whistles you add to meeting the requirement, and those may not be necessary. Importantly, you get rapid feedback, and feedback is the breakfast of champions when it comes to discovery-oriented projects. You can take corrective action sooner rather than later. In other words, the sooner you find out something doesn't work, the sooner you can take corrective action. It puts the emphasis on results as opposed to continually doing and doing and doing. One of the models of extreme project management is that it's result-oriented as opposed to task-oriented. And importantly, for the business people, the business folks, they get greater financial control because there are specific results that are measurable that come out of the time box where they can make better financial decisions as to the future course of the project. So the time box has, as you can see, a very important role in extreme project management. Reevaluate is a pause point. It could be a milestone. You could look at it that way. In the world of stage gating in product development, the reevaluate component is sometimes looked at as a stage gate. Based on what we know now, we step back and decide, what is the future course of the project? Do we kill it? Do we modify it? Do we take a brand new approach? And if that's the case, we may have to go back to ground zero, produce a new project skinny, and then start again with a new skinny in mind. If there's a mental model that I'd like you to take away from this in terms of comparing it to the traditional model, this is the mental model for extreme project management that I like to use. So we've got a squiggly line. And notice we don't try to bludgeon that squiggly line into a flat line by overwhelming the project with lots of constraints. We let the project fluctuate within predetermined or pre-agreed upon boundaries. And those boundaries are the metrics, are defined as the metrics of the project imperative, sometimes also known as the win condition. So we have a metric for what is the quality metric, what is the scope metric, what is the financial metric that we're going to be using, and so on. So we let the project vacillate between these, within these ranges. And as we move along, we keep the project in control by constantly time boxing. So we have boundaries on the project and we have time boxing on the inside of the project. And as the project moves along from left to right, the uncertainty begins to become ironed out, so the cone of uncertainty starts to narrow. And when you get closer to the end of the project again and a lot of the uncertainty has been ironed out, as I mentioned earlier, you can then turn to a more prescriptive kind of project management. You can use a more traditional approach, which makes a lot of sense under those circumstances, because you do want to nail things down and you do have specific requirements that have to be met. So there you have the mental model. Again, I emphasize it's not one or the other. We're talking about situationally specific project management. And as could be Jim Lewis who first came up with this term, whole-brained project management. So there you have a quick overview of the flexible project model. And right now I want to wind up by talking about the third element, which is managing the dynamics of the project. And again, speaking of Jim Lewis, Jim actually is still here and his eyes are still open, so that's a pretty good sign. Jim first introduced me to the concept or to the idea that projects are people. I remember Jim saying one time, projects are people. And I've then also said that the converse of that is true. People can become projects, so it works, it's pretty circular. Managing the dynamics refers to the context within which your project is being done. You can look at it as the mood of the project if you want. And if you want to know how the right brain works, which is based on intuition, feeling, gut feeling, if I were to ask you to think about a project that you're working on now and ask you one simple question, is your project in a good mood or is it in a bad mood? You will instantaneously be able to answer that question. You'll say it's in a good mood, it's in a bad mood, it's somewhere in between. You know that. You don't have to spend 2 weeks doing a project audit to discover the mood of the project. You know, and everybody else knows. And that's what I refer to as the dynamics. The role of the extreme project manager is to first and foremost manage the dynamics of the project. When you look at project failures, you hardly ever see, and I haven't ever seen one, where they say we didn't have the right scheduling tool, so this project crashed. It's generally not because of that. It's because something happened in the context of the project. Projects typically do not fail because people could not come up with a technical solution. The IT community has proven that it's able under just about any circumstance to come up with some kind of a technical solution. Technology is an issue, but it's not the main problem. People are the opportunity, or people are the problem. And in extreme project management, the whole model that we work with is based on a foundation of people. In other words, we do not try to fit people into project management. We don't try to force fit people into project management straitjackets. We try to have project management reflect how people like to work in the first place. So project management is a reflection of what excites people, how can we work with people to make a difference, and we build project management on that dynamic. And so one of the principles of extreme project management is that we need to focus on unleashing motivation and innovation. And we have what I call the 4 accelerators. And the first is to make change your friend as opposed to the enemy. And one of the ways you can do that is to use a flexible project model, which will allow you to adapt to change while at the same time keeping the project in control. Number 2, build on people's desire to make a difference. I'll give you a quick example here. When you ask somebody to be on a project, the term project has what I would call a downer tone to it. People don't get up in the morning, get out of bed and say, I can't wait to get back on my project? Usually it has, usually it has a negative connotation. People don't want to be on projects, they want to be on a mission. And what can you do to turn your project into a mission? For instance, when I was involved in starting a new newspaper, it was called Network World in 1985. That was the project to launch a new newspaper. This was going to be about the internet and about computer networking long before it was really popular. And we said to ourselves that our job is to lead the world into the new age of information networking. You see, it happened to be a project, but we were on a mission. So what can you do to elevate the motivation for your project by framing it in a way that allows people to see that they can make a difference? The third is create ownership for results. People support what they create. And will you spend the time to allow them to leave their fingerprints on the project plan so that they will more likely support it? And then fourthly, if you want to unleash motivation and innovation, you want to do the simplest thing that works. If you want to kill motivation and innovation, overwhelm people with tons of rules, tools, procedures, policies, put them in a straitjacket, and you will squelch all motivation and innovation, and your project will move into a bad mood. And then finally, in order to succeed, I don't want to say finally, there may be some other things to do, but these are the pillars of extreme project management. The first thing to do is to start building trust and confidence. If you have an extreme project, some people are going to love it, some people are going to be very anxious and stressed about that. And to build trust and confidence, we use something that's called the 10 shared values. Now, I'm not going to go through and define these because they need no definition. All you need to do is come up with your own definition of what client collaboration means. What does it mean to you to put people first if you're a project manager? What does clarity of purpose mean to you? How can you ensure clarity of purpose? What can you do to focus on results rather than tasks? So these are the things that I'm suggesting you take under your wing and come up with your own definitions. And if you live these 10 shared values, if you practice these, you will start to build trust and confidence in the ability to succeed. Because, you know, they say if you think you can if you're a project team, and if you think you can't, you can't. In either case, you're correct. So here are the 10 shared values that you can use. And then finally, and this is, I guess, based on the 10th shared value, which says courage. And, you know, what is courage? Courage means to me having the fear and doing it anyway. And sometimes, as a project manager, you really need to assert yourself. One of the silent killers of projects is good soldier syndrome. Good soldier syndrome says the customer or the sponsor wants this, and you are willing, without any deliberation, to comply because that's what's asked of you. And so you become a good soldier. In other words, they say jump, and the project manager says how high on the way up. Project managers are often saddled with an arcane methodology that could be promulgated with good intentions by the project office. And sometimes those methodologies are not conducive to successful project management in terms of an extreme project environment. And frankly, sometimes you simply have to know how to say no and practice what some people have called intelligent disobedience. So there you have some of the main foundational blocks of extreme project management. By way of summary, question your worldview by adopting a quantum mindset. Look at the list that I gave you when you download the slides and ask yourself, do you tend to be more of a Newtonian versus a quantum-oriented individual? What are the hallmarks? How do you know? Now, I will tie that into manage the dynamics if you practice the 4 accelerators and you put into practice the 10 shared values. you will start to act in a quantum way. So you don't need to have brain surgery. You need to become what I might call a quantum actor. Secondly, look at your project management model. What can you do to adopt a change-tolerant project management model that will be based on time boxing, iterative development, do a little, show a little, and that will be based on plain English project management so that everybody can understand it right from the get-go. And I've given you a tool called the 3-sentence project skinny so that you can work with the team to ensure that you have goal alignment, including with the sponsor. And then finally, managing the dynamics, looking at the mood of your project and putting into place, again, the 4 accelerators and the 10 shared values. So if at this point you find yourself interested in more about extreme project management, you can avail yourself of my book by going to Amazon.com, and you will get lots of tools, lots of practices, lots of techniques here that you can use for projects that meet the definition of extreme. If you would like to test drive project management, I should say extreme project management, NC State University has a workshop coming up November 12th and 14th. It's a 3-day workshop. You're welcome to attend that. For further information, for pricing, and for information specifically as to the course content, if you call area code 919-515-2261, you will be given information, and they can also give you a link to the website which will tell you exactly what we're covering in the Extreme Project Management course. And for those of you who are interested in real-time application, meaning applying extreme project management to an existing project in real time, whether it's a kickoff or whether it's a retrofit, if you want to talk to me about that, you can send me an email at dougdecarlo@bellsouth.net. So those are the main points that I wanted to cover. If there are any questions, well, actually we can have questions because this is without Q&A, right? Yeah, you can email me some questions. I'm happy to address those. And please avail yourself of the opportunity to download the slides and use some of the tools that I gave you. Test drive them. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to my colleague Jim, and I wish you extreme success on all of your projects. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Okay, there are 2 things I'd like to mention. One is that some of you may watch this program after the November 12th through 14th dates in 2012. We can still allow you to get credit for going through this program if you will drop me a note at lewisinstituteinc@yahoo.com. That's lewisinstituteinc@yahoo.com, and that's all run together, lewisinstituteinc@yahoo.com. Now, in order to get a PDU for this, you have to answer 2 questions. Doug talked about 2 different mindsets. I'd like for you to tell me what those 2 mindsets are and which one he suggested is most appropriate for extreme projects. Okay, so that's the first one. The second one that you need to answer is this question, which I'm going to tell you the answer to so that you can show that you were watching at the very end, and that is, what is my zip code? And the answer is 28730. 28730. So you need to provide me with the answer to both those questions. And when you write me the email, we will then tell you how to claim credit for your PDU with the Project Management Institute. Lewis Institute is a registered education provider with them, and you will be able to get credit so long as that's true. If you watch this 10 years from now and I'm long since dead and gone and the Lewis Institute no longer exists, then all bets are off. In any case, thank you very much for watching the video, watching our program. We both hope that you got some useful ideas And as Doug said, wishing you extreme success in all your ventures. Good luck.